Hello, Alan. Welcome to the Downtown Den. How's things, mate?
I'm not too bad, Chris. How are you?
I'm very well. You've just got
Coping
off
all right?
your... Sorry?
Are you coping all right?
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're a week in now, I think, from homework. And so, yeah, it's been pretty seamless, to be honest. Keeping in touch regular. You?
Yeah, not too bad. So I, I mean, I have an office I work from, but I don't have to be there particularly. My job is twofold: is being out and about, meeting people and talking to them, and speaking at events and things. And the other one is referring documents and doing emails, and I can do that. I do that generally from home anyway, so it's been a little bit disruptive, but not entirely disruptive.
And you've just got off a virtual lunch, have you, with your colleagues?
Yeah, we do. So right, so when they first said, "Oh, we're gonna have a Zoom meeting every lunch and we'll all meet up," I thought, oh, that's just if you'd said that to me a month ago, I'd have poked you in the eye. I thought no, but actually, do you know what? It's great. It really
Yeah.
everyone. There's about sometimes there's six of us, sometimes about 15 of us, and it's completely informal. Everyone just literally has the lunch and has a chat, and it's been really useful for me. I'd recommend it, actually.
Yeah, we've been meeting via Zoom every morning and sort of in the afternoon to keep in touch. And yeah, it's just good to interact, isn't it? And I've spent a lot more time on the phone this past week as well. So no, it's been interesting. Well, thanks for joining us anyway, mate. Can you kick off by just telling us who you are and your job title? Yeah, we'll start with that first.
Okay, takes a while. So my full job title is European Space Agency Business Applications Regional Ambassador Platform for Northwest England and North Wales. So that's the job title, and what it means is so So the European Space Agency is the European equivalent of NASA, so independent from the EU. So it predates the EU slightly. And within that is business applications. And that is about helping businesses that aren't in the space sector to use space. So think about satellite positioning. And that's also, you can use that for timing and navigation. Satellite communications for ubiquitous, resilient connectivity. Satellite imagery, which we can go into a bit later on. So it's trying to help businesses that wouldn't normally be thinking of space and helping them integrate those techniques and those technologies into their products and services. And we do that essentially with funding. So my job is to find those businesses in the Northwest and to help them understand space better, and then help them in the process of applying for the support and the funding from us.
Yeah. So can you just talk a bit about broader the space sector, but why you are based where you are and why you was appointed into the role and how as a region we perform?
Okay, yeah. So when we talk about space, people tend to think about great big rockets and $100 billion missions and facilities the size of a small country and all that. But in the UK, space is worth like £16 billion a year. It grows about 3.5%. Sorry, 5.5%. And that's not government spending. That's commercial economic turnover. So that mostly looks like what we call satellite applications, which is what I'm working in. So literally 2/3 of the space sector is the use of this data. Think about Uber as an example. And you might just think, well, that's a bit tenuous, isn't it? Not really. So every time you click the button on your Uber app, you interact with like $1 billion worth of space technology. And the government has now classifies space as critical national infrastructure. So that's up there along with, the national grid and roads and the internet, because, well, it touches every part of our lives. But in terms of the economic activity, the government's dedicated to growing the space sector by 2030. From currently, we've got about 5% of the global share of the global space industry. And the government wants it to be 10% by 2030. And conservative estimates put that at about £50 billion to the UK economy. Some will put it a lot more than that. Now, the Northwest and North Wales, because I cover both. The Northwest has got a massive digital economy across Liverpool, Manchester, Lancashire, Cheshire and Warrington. I'm hosted by STFC at Daresbury, near Widnes, which is other side from Widnes, which is one of the country's most powerful supercomputers is based there, technically in the Liverpool City region. In the Northwest, up in Lancashire, we build the F-35 stealth fighter. Just over the way in North Wales, we build the wings of the A380 Super Jumbo. In Cumbria, we build nuclear submarines. And despite all that advanced manufacturing and crucially all that digital expertise, the Northwest generates less than 0.5% of the UK space economy, which is just like a national scandal as far as I'm concerned. And so the ESA Business Applications Ambassador, there used to be one nationally based down in Oxfordshire. And because the programme was really successful, basically the UK government spent, it's government spent, it's public money. And for every pound they invest through business applications, £14 goes back into the UK economy in terms of jobs and tax revenue and whatnot. So it's a good programme, and they wanted to increase its effectiveness. So they split that one ambassador role down to 5 regional ambassador roles. And we're now tasked with just working on our region. And because the Northwest and North Wales have been overlooked for so long, we're starting to really see a change in how that's working, a real uptake in how businesses are crucially, first off, understanding how space technologies can be used for them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably your biggest challenge, isn't it? Because it took me a while to get my head around it when you trying to engage with us. So I'll put this into context. How we met, you've got another job.
Oh, okay, yeah. Shall I tell them or shall you?
And you used to say that again, mate.
Shall I tell them or do you want to?
Well, then you tell them how we met.
So we met through. It was Roger Jonas, wasn't it, back in the day?
Yeah.
When he was when he was doing junior events. So I knew Roger outside of that, and I was and still am a jazz singer. So I sang at quite a lot of your events back in the day, 15 years ago, maybe more.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how. And then I headlined in the Hilton every week, so I used to see you guys there quite a bit as well. But then space was always on the side, and now they pay me to do space. So here I am.
Yeah, so that's probably my most bizarre introduction, to be honest, of my whole time at downtown.
But I've been trying to bend your ears on space for like 10 years, and you're like, just shut up and sing, Alan. Get on with it.
Yeah, I just thought you were really into rockets and spaceships and things. You mentioned there, Al, the funding. Do you just want to go into a bit more detail on the funding available to businesses?
Yeah, so we do. We've got all kinds of available, really. So you've got the kind of direct funding. I'm just going to bring it up on my computer here so I can tell you what's currently active on our website, which is business.esa.int. That's INT. So we fund, demonstration projects and feasibility studies around themes. So some of the themes we've currently got available, some of the funds that are currently out there are space systems for safety and security. We've got a COVID-19 response, space for rail. So space for rail would be things like ensuring resilient and ubiquitous connectivity for Wi-Fi on board, if you're using integrated systems, including satellite communications, for example. We've got ports of the future, green buildings, decommissioning of energy assets, smart supply chains, connected rural communities. So these are all 100% funded, usually, up to about €200,000. And it's about helping, like with ports of the future, for example, helping businesses develop services for ports that are going to be using space technologies, such as positioning technology, satellite communications, or Earth observation imagery. But we also have, and really where I come into it, we also have something called the direct negotiation, in which ESA will listen to any idea, regardless of what calls they've put out, regardless of what they're looking for. They will consider any project to be funded at 50% of project cost in order to get this the service, the product to market. And my role there is to identify those companies and help them basically fill in the application, the initial stages of the application forms.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been doing events probably about 12, 18 months now, isn't it?
Yeah, so that was through our partners at the UK Space Agency. And I think they bit your hand off when you applied for that because downtown's is so well connected in the region. Because you approached them and said, look, we'd like to do a series of events based around what matters to business in the region. So, there was a construction one and there was a logistics one, and getting those businesses around the table. So the UK Space Agency were really interested in doing that because they're aware that that the Northwest is slightly behind in all this. Yeah. And as I say, we're improving all the time. So I'm really glad that you guys spotted that it wasn't just the guy was thinking, trying to bend your ear after a couple of whiskeys. That it was a huge business opportunity. Globally, this industry is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Bank of America and Goldman Sachs about 3 years ago said that by 2050 they're expecting the industry to be worth $1 trillion. They've since changed that, and they reckon that it could be close to $1 trillion by 2030. So it's accelerating all the time, and it is by and large, and I keep saying this is some of it is people building big rockets and spacecraft and satellites, but the vast majority of it are businesses, very much like those who are represented within downtown in business. And it's about them using that data to make their products and services better to reach new markets.
Yeah, they've all been fascinating, and I think our members have learned a huge amount on how they can engage with you guys. Obviously, the past week or so, the world has massively changed in how we work for the time being. Is that something you think your sector can really get involved in moving forward in the future as well?
Yeah, without question. So, I mean, what we're doing here in our little boxes here, this teleconference and stuff, this technology's been around for a while. I mean, if something like this had happened in 2008, it'd be a very different story. We wouldn't be able to do this. We would to an extent, but people wouldn't be able to download various party apps and chat with the mates and all that stuff. So where we are now, this idea, and I think behaviour has been nudged, and I think the longer this continues, and it may come in waves, the restrictions may be relaxed only to be reimposed in a couple of months to try and control the spread of the virus. But if the behaviour is nudged the way I suspect it is, then people will choose to do this. I was the worst for it. If I had a meeting in Cumbria or in Aberystwyth, I'd drive down to it because I always prefer a face-to-face meeting. And now we've kind of been forced to do this. I think more people will take that on board. And in terms of the space sector, I've said ubiquitous resilience connectivity a few times already. That's what satellite communications offers. And there's a revolution happening at the moment. So I'll go into a little bit of detail if that's all right. So in 2002, most of you will have heard of Elon Musk, the guy behind Tesla and connected with PayPal and whatnot. His other company, which you may know, is called SpaceX, Space Exploration Corporation. And when that was founded in 2002, to get 1 kilogram into low Earth orbit, which is about 300 miles up, 1 kilogram cost $114,000 to do that in 2002. Today, SpaceX quotes $3,000 to do the same thing. And they and other partners like Jeff Bezos with his Blue Origin company are well on track to get that cost down to tens of dollars per kilogram to get into space. And that means that more people can put up satellites. Private companies can, and universities and schools and private individuals in some cases, certainly small to medium enterprises, can afford to build small, what we call CubeSats, which are literally, the size of a loaf of bread. And think how powerful the camera is on your phone, right? Now scale that up. so it goes on the end of a loaf of bread. That's a hell of an instrument you've got there. And so there's lots of these satellites being launched. And that is where you start to get innovation. The more private companies that get involved in a market, they start to push against each other. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but what happens on Earth happens in space. And so there's two major projects at the moment. One is another SpaceX one called Starlink. And the other one is called OneWeb, which is actually an SME based in London. And they are launching constellations of low Earth orbit communication satellites, which probably doesn't mean anything to anyone who's listening. But if you go out and you look on the sides of all the buildings, anyone who's got Sky TV, you'll notice that all the satellites are pointing in the same direction. And they don't move, they just point in the same direction. Because they're pointing at one satellite, which is 36,000 miles away. And the orbit that it's in means that as it goes around the Earth, as the Earth turns, it goes around and it stays over the same point. And so it just stays in the same fixed point in the sky. That's why when you watch someone on the news being interviewed like this, far away, you'll get a lag. You'll get just under a second lag because it takes time for the signal to go up and to come down. The low Earth orbit ones that they're building, like Starlink, for example, are 300 miles up. They're very complex. There'll be thousands of them. But Starlink has already demonstrated, it's got hundreds of satellites up there at the moment, that it can deliver ultra high-speed broadband from space. That means no digging up roads, no putting in fiber optics, anything like that. Now, for you and I who live in or close to a city, we have connectivity, that's all right. But most of the planet doesn't have that. Large parts of Britain don't have it. You go to Snowdonia or the Highlands or somewhere like that. No one's digging up the 100 miles of Highlands to get a cable to two houses. But those two houses now can have high-speed broadband. And when I say high speed, I mean 100 times faster than I've currently got in my house. Real high-speed broadband. And that's going to be available in the next few months in the United States and within a year or two globally to every single square inch of the planet. So if our behaviors have changed because of this virus, then it's absolutely going to be underpinned by space technology. And what we're interested in at business applications is finding those innovative and interesting services that need that infrastructure.
Just before I do let you go, mate, do you want to highlight anything that you're doing at the minute with any companies or projects you've done in the past that maybe people can relate to?
Yeah. I mean, I can't go into too much detail because, there's a lot of commercial sensitivity. But there are companies, so I know, obviously I'm very familiar with Downtown, and I know you have quite a lot of construction companies. Yeah. And so there's one in particular, I'm just going to get the information up so I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've lost it. Basically, this was using data from space to allow people to monitor assets like bridges. So rather than if you're a quantity surveyor, or if you were responsible for the upkeep of, the Mersey Gateway Bridge, for example, let's say it's that. Rather than having to send people out every 6 months and to check subsidence and these kind of things, that data is generated every day. It's in some cases more than once a day by satellites in space through a mixture of things. But they have radar altimetry, where the just sends a radar pulse back, and you can see millimeter changes in topography by putting very accurate GPS systems on it, so you can see how it's moved. I will point out that at the moment, the GPS systems that everyone uses has about 7-meter accuracy. As of next year, maybe the year after, that's going to go down to about 20 centimeter accuracy. So suddenly the applications there are really interesting. So that was a project. I think that was an Italian project, that bridge one, that ESA Business Applications supported. But we've helped in this region. I've helped a company in Lancashire that does sports photography. They photograph marathons and cycling events and all these kind of things. What has that got to do with space? And the answer is that their profit margins are driven by how fast they can get those images online.
Yeah.
And if you're out in the middle of Snowdonia for taking pictures of 5,000 people doing a half marathon, you can't use the mobile phone signal ain't going to work. So what you do? And they were having to put it all on a hard drive, deliver it, plug it in, and hope. And it was up a day later. And we're working with them to try and get them to be able to do that in practically real time, so that you do your run, and by the time you get to the finish line, your friends and family have already bought photographs of you at the halfway mark, all that stuff. So there's a huge range of applications for this technology. Apparently, I was told recently that from the moment you wake up to the moment you get to your place of work, obviously not nowadays because everyone's locked in the house, but before this, in that brief time of getting up and getting to work, you interacted with about 25 individual satellites in space. And that data is being generated. So how do we use it? And that's commercially, that's what we're interested in finding out and supporting.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see. And obviously the retail and hospitality sector are obviously struggling at the minute. So it'd be interesting how those sectors could potentially use space data as well.
We've seen some stuff already coming through around that. Geopositioning. People trying, local businesses banding together to build a platform by which they can push their offers. Let's say you're a local baker. And you've baked 50 loaves of bread and you've got 10 left and you need to get rid of them and they're going to be 20 pence each. With these apps, you push it to whoever's near you. Yeah. Bing, 10 meters from you, loaf of bread for 20p. Oh, I'll get that. And you think, well, because it's that position and technology, you've triangulated your position and the position of your potential customer using space technology and space assets. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
No, it is fascinating, and we could sit here all afternoon. We really could. But I'm going to let you go now, mate. Depending on how long this lockdown carries on, I might be dragging you back to sing for us, though. Get your tucks out.
Yeah. First one, then the other. Yeah.
Top man.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Bye now.